All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of Two Takes with Alex and Tate. We have got the Super Bowl coming up, the NBA All-Star break coming up, a lot going on in the world of sports. Really, one of my favorite times is the Super Bowl through the end of the NBA season because after the Super Bowl, we have the All-Star break coming up. Forgive me, I don't know the dates exactly when the All-Star break is, but I know it's a week or two after the Super Bowl. So, after that is when the NBA season usually starts to kind of ratchet up in intensity. Teams start getting ready for playoff mode. The defense steps up a little bit, which has been there's been a lot of points scored in the NBA this season. So you could portray that how you want to, or you can kind of view that however you choose to interpret. But the defenses should start to tighten up here, and we'll have the NFL draft to talk about coming up in a couple months too. Uh, yeah. Alex, how are you doing? What do you want to start with today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, Tate. Today I wanted to start because as we know, we've been covering a lot of NFL, and like you
Yeah.
said, NBA is going to start ratcheting up here in like 2-3 weeks. So we're going to start seeing a little bit more competitiveness, seeing what these teams are made of. So I wanted to start off with the NBA stuff before we get into the Super Bowl and
Sure.
NFL. Uh, One of the biggest kind of things that happened, Joel Embiid got his knee real injured to the point that it's damaged to meniscus. They didn't say anything about tearing, but it is looking like he might need some surgery, which would be just devastating for his team. Uh, Tate, what does this mean for the Eastern Conference in the NBA?
Okay. So I'm a little torn about what I think about the Joel Embiid injury because at times Joel Embiid looks like he's the most dominant player in the NBA. We've seen him score 70 points this season on crazy efficiency. He is almost like a modern day Shaq in a way, where he's physically so big when he's healthy. There's not really anyone in the league that's a matchup for him, and that's when Shaq was at his prime. There wasn't anyone who physically could guard Shaq. Embiid is not that level. And obviously, we hadn't seen the postseason success, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But when Embiid looks his best, it looks as good as anybody in the NBA, maybe even including Jokic, who I wasn't a fan of, and now I am a huge fan of. Is Jokic really? It's hard not to like what he's doing in the Western Conference. So why I'm torn about the Embiid injury is because unfortunately, I didn't trust Embiid to make it all the way through the postseason anyway, healthy. And we've seen that a bit, basically every year of his career, outside of maybe the Kawhi Leonard Toronto championship year, where they lost in Game 7 on just a heartbreaking last second shot by my guy Kawhi Leonard. But every other year since then, including last season, he's dealing with injuries in the postseason. The year before, he's dealing with injuries in the postseason, and they haven't been able to get over the hump. And I think, in large part, if not the majority of the blame for that, in my opinion, is just you need your best player in the playoffs to be available and to be playing their best basketball in the postseason. We've seen that from a lot of the greats, obviously, like guys like Michael Jordan. But even you look at some of the players who aren't LeBron or Kobe, of the teams that end up winning the championship. I think about a guy like Jamal Murray, who, when he is healthy, the Nuggets are a totally different team. They really struggled in the postseason the years he was not playing, and he really elevates his game in the playoffs. And when he's healthy and available, he elevates his game. That's the kind of performance you need out of your best players to win a championship in the NBA, right? Not make the second round of the playoffs, not have a good regular season, but to really be a championship level team. Uh, you have to have your best players playing their best basketball at the end of the year. So in that sense, I wasn't all in on Philly anyway, even though they're kind of one of these teams where I thought any year, if they could stay healthy, they could win the whole thing, right? But which year that was going to be, I would never bet on them because I didn't really expect it ever. You know what I mean? So as far as what that means for the East, it's really disappointing, and it's going to make it maybe anticlimactic, especially if Embiid has to miss the whole regular season. But to me, essentially means you got a two, maybe a three-team race. I think Boston should be the favorite right now, even though I don't love Tatum always in the postseason. He seems to shy away from some of these big moments in playoff basketball. Now, we have also seen him deliver in big games. I think about the game 6 against Milwaukee a couple of years ago when they ended up making the finals. He had 45 points and was shooting laser beams out of his eyes at the defense in that game. Where he can bring it in big moments, but we've also seen him scoring single digits against Miami in a game 7. It's like really, really can struggle at times in these big playoff games too. So I like Boston. I think they should be the favorite. The Porzingis edition looks like it's just frankly a great fit. They were already really good at perimeter defense, and when you add someone who can protect the rim like a Porzingis can, and not to mention if he's your fourth best player behind Tatum, Jaylen Brown, probably Drew Holiday. Most people think's a little better. That's a guy that can give you 35 any night in Porzingis. He's 7'3", 7'4", could shoot three, could take you off the dribble, has some post-up game. He's someone that can get hot. And frankly, is someone I could see taking over a playoff series for him if the moment called for it in the kind of the right setting, especially without Embiid, where now all of a sudden you're looking at only one team that really has a defender fit to stop Porzingis, maybe two, Giannis in Milwaukee. I like Milwaukee's defense, on the interior at least. And then Bam Adebayo in Miami is an excellent defender in Miami. But they should roll everybody else almost to me. And that brings me to Milwaukee, who has struggled a little bit. And I was actually getting in an argument with one of my students about this because their record, I don't think shows what the eye test has said. And there's a reason they fired their brand new head coach halfway through the season and brought in Doc Rivers, which to me is a little, I like Bud at least as much as Doc Rivers. It's like, I don't know that Doc is the guy that is really going to put you over the top and get you to that next level to win a championship. We could obviously talk about the blown 3-1 leads with Doc Rivers, has more than anybody in NBA history. He does have the championship, of course, but he also had Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, who is one of the best clutch shooters we have ever seen. Rajon Rondo was basically an extra coach on the court running point guard. So it's like that was a little bit of a unique situation in that they only got one, almost could be viewed as somewhat disappointing because after that one they won in 2008, you're thinking they were going to win at least one more, and they never did. So I don't love Milwaukee for that reason. Even though Dame, I think, is an excellent offensive player, they just are lacking so much on defense. And Giannis still has the hole in his game and the one flaw, which is he's not a good shooter. And we've seen guys in the past that aren't shooters be able to kind of manage and win championships, including Giannis, by the way. People forget how good he was in the championship run they had against the Suns, where he scored 50 in the closeout game. But because of the defense and because of, I would call it vibes, it just doesn't seem like it's going perfectly in Milwaukee. So you like Milwaukee, you don't love them. Then the only other team that really stands out, I like the Pacers. They're too young. I like Cleveland. Cleveland's not winning the East. They're not a championship level team. The Knicks, Jalen Brunson's a great story. Jalen Brunson, I heard this comparison. I think you'd like it. Jalen Brunson is having a little bit of a Brock Purdy year. It's like he's a very nice player. Like no one would say Jalen Brunson sucks, but it's like, is he really going to be, is a 5'11" scoring point guard really going to put you over the top in the NBA? We love him, but probably not. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing with little Isaiah Thomas when he was playing in Boston, where it was fun, they were good, but do you really expect that guy to win you a championship? Probably not. So, if Embiid is out, it's a 3-team race. Miami, just from what we have seen in the past in the playoffs and playoff Jimmy, I will not rule them out all the way from winning the East until we see them get beaten in the playoffs. I don't care what the regular season looks like for them. I think they have the culture. I think they have the alpha player in Jimmy Butler. I think they have the coach where I think at any moment they can kick it into gear and really play some good playoff basketball. And then you have Milwaukee and Boston, who are nice and really, really good teams. I don't think either one is a great team. And with Embiid out, the frustration for the 76ers, it was kind of feeling like this was a year they could do it and get through the East because, like I said, the top two teams are flawed to me. And so if you're a Sixers fan, you're thinking, oh, if we could get it going, Embiid is, you know, maybe outside of Giannis, but can play like the best player in the East any given series, not just a night, And then Tyrese Maxey is really coming into his own. I saw a stat line recently that his stats at age 23 are better than the Sixer great Allen Iverson stats at age 23. Not saying he's a better player than Allen Iverson, and obviously the numbers have been somewhat inflated this year versus when Allen Iverson was playing. But like it's basically the same points, assists, steals, everything per game. He's just doing it at a higher clip and more efficient rate, scoring the basketball. And if that's your second best guy, point being, you have a very, very good team where then you're playing defense and hitting threes with your role players, and you're thinking you got a shot to win the East. Now, if I'm being honest, and I was talking to my buddy about this, nobody's beating Denver, just to be honest with you, unless they have an injury to Murray or obviously Jokic. Denver should be the heavy favorite. I don't care what their seed is going into the playoffs. We obviously are Thunder fans on this show. Love the Thunder. Great story. They may end up being the one seed. They're not beating Denver in a series this year. I think they're probably 1 year away from really being a competitor because they're just young, and Shea's awesome, but Giddey's young and Chet's young and Lou Dort's young and Jalen Williams is young, and all these guys are really nice players, but it reminds you a little bit of the early Kevin Durant Thunder team. Now, I don't know, Shea probably isn't the player that Kevin Durant was, but I like our other pieces more. And Chet is just cool. I mean, he's just great, man. He's a really fun player to watch. He does a lot of things really well. If he continues to hone his game, we may be looking at him taking over as the A player in Oklahoma City and eventually being a top 5 or 6 player in the NBA for, a few years in there. So the East, like I said, doesn't change my opinion too much about the playoffs, to be honest, because I don't know that I would have trusted Philly to make it through healthy, a full playoff run anyway. And frankly, I don't think anyone's beaten Denver. I think they should be the favorite to repeat. So one last thing I want to touch on real quick before you go. Sorry to cut you off, but the last thing I want to touch on real quick is the 65 game requirement for MVP or All NBA. I understand why the NBA did it. I was a big fan of it immediately. Unfortunately, they may have gotten snake bit the first year they were going to try it, and they may have to go away with it because Embiid going to miss an All NBA team, and Tyrese Halliburton, who's been playing awesome. I don't know if you've seen it, but like he's had some games where it's like 23 points, 20 assists, 10 rebounds, and no turnovers, which is freaking unbelievable, frankly. So he is really was looking at an all NBA team and almost going to be first team all NBA. Halliburton, probably not first team, but was definitely going to be second or third team. He has a serious injury, not load managing, and is going to miss out on $40 million in his contract because he's not going to make the all NBA team this year. So unfortunately for the NBA, I thought they had the league's best interest at heart, trying to get these stars to play in these big games on the Saturday nights and Christmas Day and the holidays and stuff like that. But it may have just been a bit of bad luck with two of the best players in the East and the contracts. And, we may end up seeing them having to do away with that rule at some point in the near future. But
All right, I kind of like all that you've talked about. I think you're probably right. It's just a 3-team race: Miami, Boston, Milwaukee at this point. I am going to push back a little bit on the Cavs because they've won 10 out of their last 11, beat Milwaukee like outright. And you would think that, okay, yeah, they're just young, but I mean, weren't they in the playoffs last year?
yeah,
Like that experience, that's how you get experience. Like, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
To your point, I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan. I mean,
You got to play,
he's really an explosive scorer, exciting player to watch, and tends to play really good in big games. So, yeah, could I see them upsetting a team like Boston and then maybe losing in the conference finals or losing to Denver in the finals? Yeah, I could see that. I'll give you
Yeah.
the Cavs. I don't think they're gonna do it, but like, could they get hot and could Tatum put up three stinkers in a playoff series against them and they lose? Yeah, sure. I'll give you that one. I'll give you the Cavs.
And that's what I think that we kind of forget is that, like, yeah, we expect the team that's been there the most to have the most experience on how to deal with that. But there's something about teams just getting hot sometimes, like the Eli Mannings of the world. Cross sports reference. It's like Eli Manning was never like, oh my god, this is the best quarterback I've ever seen. But you just get, he was young, he got hot and beat Tom Brady
Right.
twice. Like, what do you, sometimes it's just one of those things. And I like where the Cavs are heading, and the only reason I'm bringing up the Cavs is because I think we're seeing a nice trajectory similarly for OKC, where
I
like
don't
now
disagree with that.
that Embiid's down, like who's the MVP voting right now? It's Jokic in number one. Number two is Shea
And
Gilgeous-Alexander.
Luca would be in the conversation if they let me check real quick.
Luca,
The problem with Luca right now is they're the 8 seed. If they got up to a top four, maybe even 5 seed, he would be really in the conversation because he's like statistically as good as anybody. When you just look at the numbers, he's not that he's as good as Jokic to me, but just the regular season numbers this season, he's playing as
yeah,
good as anybody on that same point is productive.
like I get it, but you also have to realize that like the team that they're playing on, like Luca versus SGA, one of those teams would actually be able to give Denver
Oh,
a
I
good.
don't disagree with that at all. And
And
I was talking to my buddy about this where he's like, because I brought up this week off air that I wouldn't think OKC would push Denver, frankly, to a game 7. I think they could take them 6, but right now, and he kind of pushed back on it. It's like, man, I just feel like the Thunder are a year away. They have a really good team, and the trajectory, you could lose in the conference championship to Denver and feel incredibly optimistic moving forward if you're Oklahoma City. And
of
you would,
course
you know what I mean?
of course that's the case, but at the same time, some teams, some players just get hot, and that I feel like we're seeing this OKC team and this Cavs team where they're like, any given night, one of five players on either team could drop 50 and it not even break a sweat.
I probably think the Thunder have the best chance in the West of beating Denver. I'll say that. I wouldn't trust hardly anybody else to really give them a series, including the Suns, the Lakers, the Minnesota is the 2 seed right now. Shout out Anthony Edwards, he's playing awesome. The Clippers are the 3 seed. Denver's down to the 4 seed, but like I wouldn't really think the Clippers, with the caveat of if they're gonna all be healthy for once in a playoff series, maybe they could make it competitive. But like, and I love Kawhi, Paul George. I was a big fan of when he was on Oklahoma City, but it's kind of same thing as I talked about with Embiid, but far more extreme as far as health concerns in with the Clippers. Where if they could make a healthy playoff run and actually stay healthy for it's like they could really maybe make some noise and win a couple rounds and get to the conference championship and be a hard matchup for Denver, but they could also have their 3 best players all miss the series too. You know what I mean? It's like that's the problem. It's like if you don't have Kawhi, Paul George, and one of the other guys goes down, Harden or Westbrook goes down too.
It's
Even
why I,
if they don't, it's just not going to be enough, probably.
it's why I like youth, man. I
Yeah.
think I think there's something to be said about, like, yeah, experience is usually what gets you over the top, but you could just you never know how
Right.
to win until you win one,
And
right?
the unfortunate thing for the Thunder this year is just to go. Denver's young too. I mean, Denver's not this Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers. Like Jokic is in the dead prime of his career. Murray's younger than him. Their other guys are pretty young, but now they're young and also have championship experience, which is just a really hard combination when it comes to postseason basketball. It's like I think Michael Porter Jr. will have his moments, both bad and good in the postseason, but he will have good moments in the postseason. Like he's a talented dude. He's tall and can shoot the lights out at times. It's like he will have good moments. And then Jokic is just, I mean, just flatly, Jokic is as good of an offensive player as I've probably ever seen in my life. I mean, he's really, really, there's nothing on offense that he doesn't do at a pretty high level. He's not athletic, which is what's funny, but it's like kind of Larry Bird was that. He's almost like a hybrid Larry Bird center, but it's like there wasn't anything. Okay, he's going to shoot the three more efficiently than anybody. If you give him a one-on-one matchup, he's going to put his back to the basket. He's going to get a layup that's going to be a high percentage. If you try to double him, he's one of the best passers in the league, not just for a center, but period. It's like really a hard guy to defend. And if everyone else on Denver was cold or something like that, the Thunder can make it an interesting series. But I
Well,
don't count.
yeah, we'll see what happens. That's
Right.
fair.
I would love it. I mean, I would love it. I'll be rooting for him. Don't get me wrong.
Obviously, you know, Vegas takes all of these sports bets. There's a favorite for a reason. Vegas
Right.
isn't in the business of giving out free money.
They're not in the business of giving up free money. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, good NBA insights.
Yeah,
I'm interested
first kind of NBA topic of the football season, really.
yeah.
The football is just it's just interesting to me. Yeah, it's like we love the NFL, but we're winding down here.
So
Uh,
I have a question for you.
sure.
Super Bowl next week. Right
Into
now,
it.
they're getting ready for the Pro Bowl tonight. That's going to be the most amazing 7-on-7 flag football you've ever seen in the past 364 days.
Can we just briefly? I hate the Pro Bowl. I think it's so boring. I think they should, and I think they may be trending this way, but they shouldn't even have a game. It should be like the quarterbacks they used to do. Who can throw the ball the farthest? It's like they should have skills challenges and stuff like that.
Well,
Who can dunk a basketball on the highest goal out of the NFL guys? That would be more fun to watch than the Pro Bowl game, unfortunately.
I do think they do have those like who won the precision passing tournament
Who?
on
I don't know, actually. Is
Baker Mayfield.
that right?
Yeah.
He has all of a sudden become kind of likable, I think. And he was so polarizing and then just got so humbled that now he's got a little bit of a sense of humor about it where he's not really taking himself very seriously. You saw the joke probably where he's like just said, my last pass was to the cornerback for Detroit. So it's like I was looking forward to it. It's like kind of funny, man. It's like he's all of a sudden turning into more of a likable character in the media, and I love to see it because he had a great season. I think he in the right system can play really well. And I think he's a
And that night,
starter in the NFL.
they had a dodgeball tournament, and today
Right.
there's all kinds of different games going on
Yeah, that's
today.
fun. That's
But
fun. Yeah, they just need to steer into that aspect of it.
if you've ever seen CD Lamb play dodgeball, the man would give Vince Vaughn a run for his money.
All
Like
right.
average Joe's needs to draft him, offer him,
Uh, I'm
$10,000.
gonna interrupt. Can I give one more quick NBA take real quick?
Yeah, of course.
One
It's
more. It's okay. I'm gonna give one more quick NBA take real quick. All these guys that are scoring a lot of points, right? Whatever you think about it, stop taking the dang picture where you're trying to copy Wilt Chamberlain. Tyrese Maxey scored 50 in a game and did the picture with the piece of paper with like, man, if you pass Kobe, if you score more than 81, take the picture. If you're not even second all time in points in the game, you don't take the picture, man. Now everybody's doing it every time they have a good game. It's like, man,
I was
enough with the picture. It's like he scored 100 points in a professional basketball game. whatever you think about the era, that is unbelievable. And like I said, no one's even been second yet. Since Kobe scored 81 in a professional basketball game. Like, don't take the pick. Embiid did it when he scored 70. It's like, man, cool, you scored 70. It's awesome. What a career accomplishment. Scored 70 points in a game. Not many people have done it. You're 11 points away from being tied at second place still.
I was waiting for you. I was surprised you didn't bring that up immediately once I said NBA.
Right. It's just driving me crazy, man. It's like Luka, I think, did it with the 73-point game. It's like, cool, man. You're 9 points away from being isolated second place. It's like that 73 puts you, I think, tied for fifth in point. It's like, you just got to stop it. You just got to stop taking the picture. It's driving me off the wall. It's driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah. For listeners of the podcast, Tate did this exact rant, but it went on for like 5 more minutes whenever we were on the phone. Like
I'm stopping myself today because we have other topics that we want to talk about, but it's just I hate it. I hate it. I hate the picture. I hate the picture, man. I hate it. Stop doing the damn picture. Okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
super back to what we started this with. Super Bowl. Who's got the most to lose?
Okay. Let me process for a little bit. I am going to say the most to lose, and this may surprise Alex a little bit, but not that much. It's got to be Kyle Shanahan. So let's go through the candidates real quick. Patrick Mahomes is chasing all-time greats. With a loss a week from today, that makes that mission quite a bit harder because you have to get these rings, you have to capitalize on these opportunities when they come up because even though he's been to 6 straight conference championship games, it is hard to get back to the Super Bowl, even when you're an all-time great, even when you have an all-time great coach. It is flatly difficult to get back to the Super Bowl. Now, would they be my pick to get back next year? Way too early pick? Yeah, they would be. But what if he gets injured and misses a chunk of time? It's like, it's just something when you get to the Super Bowl and you're chasing all timers, you have to capitalize on these opportunities. He is at no risk with the loss of any one of his contemporaries being close to him. He is in a league all of his own of the active NFL quarterbacks. Burrow, Lamar, Josh Allen, everyone's got a lot of work to do before they get in the Patrick Mahomes conversation. But that is not the goal for Patrick Mahomes, right? Second, another candidate people might talk about, Brock Purdy, to me, doesn't have a ton to lose. Now, if he puts up a real stinker, I mean a 4 interception kind of game, like just a dud. Could the Niners potentially be looking at other quarterback options in the offseason? Because there's about 5 quarters where he got outplayed by Jordan Love and Jared Goff this postseason, right? And, outside of the Jordan Love pick on the last play, the meaningful play of the game against Packers, Jordan Love really probably outplayed him for the whole game or close to it. You could argue in the fourth quarter, Brock Purdy had a nice drive, but it hasn't, eye test wise, looked great for Purdy this postseason. So if he really put up a dud and Kirk Cousins would take less to come to San Francisco or something like that, could he be at risk? A little bit, probably. I wouldn't count on it. I don't think he has a ton to lose because he's the last pick in the draft. And guys that are critics, if he loses to Mahomes, well, we kind of expected that anyway, right? It's like just frankly not a huge deal if he ends up losing to Mahomes. If he wins it, that's a different story. Probably still not elite, but all of a sudden he's looking maybe, you brought him up and I was actually made this exact comparison to my dad, maybe looking like an Eli Manning guy, where Brock Purdy, one thing I will say about him, he seems like he kind of got the clutch gene. Like he's a nice player, like another guy I compared him to cross sports was Rajon Rondo, who, was a player in the regular season and is a nice player. No one ever thought he was going to be the best player in the league, right? But come the playoffs, he was a different animal and he was a headache and he was scary to play in the playoffs. Could Brock Purdy have that kind of arc where it's like, okay, he's a nice player. No one thinks he's really probably an elite guy, definitely not in the conversation for best quarterback in the league, but he's got the clutch gene and is scaring. Yeah, he could turn into that to me, and that would be that kind of legacy where, okay, he's big in big moments. could definitely be, that's the kind of conversation we could start having about him with a win, right? Is how good, he may bring it in these big moments and clutch drives of playoff games, and then may develop into an elite player, but even if he's not quite there yet. Andy Reid is a made man in a lot of ways. If he ever wanted to get into the GOAT coach conversation, kind of same thing that we talked about with Mahomes, you just have to capitalize on these opportunities. But everybody loves Andy Reid. No one's going to kill him if they get beat. They've been to 6 straight conference championships, 4 Super Bowls in that time. Even with the loss, they'll be 2-2 in the Super Bowl, which is by anyone's metric outside of maybe Tom Brady is a pretty damn good Super Bowl record, 2-2, so no one's going to kill Andy Reid. The only thing to lose for him is, like I said, you're trying to chase these all-timers. You just got to win when you have the opportunity to, if you want to get into those kind of conversations and the Mount Rushmore coaches kind of talks, that kind of circle. You got to go ahead and win Sunday for Andy Reid. Kyle Shanahan, on the other hand, has not won a ring as a head coach. It has become sort of documented at this point. He does not always bring it in his best playoff game, in the biggest moments. We saw, obviously, as the offensive coordinator, him tighten up against Tom Brady when they're up 28-3 with just a disastrous comeback for his career. And then some of it you could put on the quarterback play, making the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, but they were up 20-10 in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs and ended up losing by like 11 points. It wasn't even very close by the end of the game. And some of that, I think, is he gets overly conservative in the playoffs down the stretch of games. And we've seen it even on some of the games that they won where teams kind of can hang around on San Francisco, and Kyle Shanahan, I think, gets conservative. I think tightens up as a play caller a little bit. Now, it will be somewhat of a test, I think, of how much he trusts Brock Purdy if they get a lead in the Super Bowl, how the offense looks with a lead in the Super Bowl. Now, they also have Christian McCaffrey, so it's possible they just hand the ball off and McCaffrey goes nuts and they win anyway. But if he loses, I think that's a real problem for his legacy, where all of a sudden he's made a couple Super Bowls and basically blown every Super Bowl he's ever been in. You know what I mean? We without knowing how this game's going to look. It could be really, really a negative hit on his resume. And some coaches get that kind of reputation where it's like, okay, he's got a great system. He's great in the regular season, but is he the guy that can really get you over the top? And does his philosophy work at winning at the highest level? And whether they be fair or not, I think there will be questions about Kyle Shanahan if he loses. So to me, he is the one with the most at stake this Super Bowl. And on the other end, if he wins, all of a sudden we're talking about him as maybe the second best coach in the league behind Andy Reid. Maybe people think he's the best coach in the league because he's done it without Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. He's kind of done it with Jimmy G and, some other guy, kind of some no names at quarterback compared to some of these other Super Bowl winners that we've seen. It's the polar opposite reaction for Kyle Shanahan from a win or a loss. Like I said, to me, it just means he has the most at stake because there's a lot of variant of how we could view him as a coach after next Sunday.
Yeah, I generally agree with everything you just said, and I'm fully on the Shanahan probably has the most to lose in this. Um, but I think it gets back to like the philosophy of Shanahan, which is the absolute refusal to like go and invest in a quarterback because his scheming, his play calling, everything that he does as a head coach is designed to have playmakers, like top end playmakers at every position
Yeah.
except for quarterback.
Right.
Inherently means that he does not trust quarterbacks. Like, I mean,
And we've seen that,
it,
not necessarily with Purdy, but with Jimmy G. I think we definitely saw that where there was
well,
an element of like people will recall the game with Jimmy G when they made the Super Bowl in the NFC playoffs where they threw 8 passes and won the game. It's like there's an element of, and this is purely speculation, right? There's an element almost that seems like almost a pride thing where it's like, hey, I don't need a quarterback to win at the high level, right? Now, the only thing I'll push back on, they did try to go get a playmaker in Trey Lance. Now that ends up looking like a terrible trade, hindsight, a terrible move, but they tried to go get a blue chip prospect in Trey Lance. It went as bad as it could go. Uh, so there's some, yeah, they're not all in and investing in that position. And then I think some of the criticism should be how good are they at actually evaluating quarterback talent? Because Trey Lance, third pick in the draft, if you want to tell me that they thought Brock Purdy was going to be a superstar with a Mr. Relevant pick, I'm just not going to believe you. That's just kind of finding a diamond in the rough to me, which happens, and like someone liked him in the building if they drafted him, it's like someone liked him. I will
Yeah,
give him some credit, but no one thought Brock Purdy was going to be their starter in a Super Bowl run either.
even within that, like, did you hear the one of the guys who's close to the 49ers said, spring 2023,
I did hear this.
yeah, they got Brock Purdy and they were like, oh, okay, maybe, or maybe it was 2022, but it was like whenever they first got Brock Purdy, they brought him in on training camp, and supposedly Shanahan came out and said, oh, our best quarterback is our third stringer. And
What do you think about that?
was the case, that season would not have looked like that. They wouldn't have gone from Jimmy G to Trey Lance to Jimmy G, and
That's
then
exactly how I feel too. That's
finally,
exactly how I feel too.
and I think that's, yeah, you're probably right with that. They
By
just aren't good
process of elimination, they had to go with Brock Purdy. Ended up being the best move they've made at the quarterback position as a franchise in a while. But that wasn't the plan. And if he really was the best quarterback on the roster, it shouldn't have taken all of the other quarterbacks getting injured, Trey Lance breaking his leg, Jimmy G being Jimmy G and being made of glass and missing the rest of the seat. It's like
well.
that's when Brock
It
Purdy got the start.
it just shows you that they're not looking at the quarterback as anything more than a value of what they can get for it. Right? It's like a money value, because they wouldn't have kept trying to get Trey Lance unless they to work, unless they thought like, well, we sunk so much into this guy and we can't just put out like a backup who's playing better than him, because they don't think of it as this this player is more important for this position. They think of it as, we lost cost in acquiring this player, and it makes you a little bit gun shy to go and try to do that again. But I guarantee you, whenever the Kansas City Chiefs win and Brock Purdy faces probably the best defense that he's going to have faced, right?
Totally agree. The Packers are nice on defense. They're not an elite defense. The Lions had Nick Mullins throw for 400 yards on them.
Yeah,
And that was a little bit of the thing with that Lions game. I know we talked about that last time. The comeback was great. I don't want to take anything away from them. The Lions have probably the worst defense that made the playoffs. So it's like that was, and that was part of it. Now, you're down 24-7, you come back and win the game, you deserve some credit, if not a lot of credit for it, right? But it was against a pretty bad defense. I think that is definitely working in the Chiefs' favor. Also, the fact that they have been here a lot. This is their what, fourth time going to the Super Bowl in 6 years or something like that. So it's like they have maybe 4 out of 5. Have to do the math. I should have done that earlier. But anyway, the Chiefs know how to handle this week by now, right? They know how to handle all the off-field press and extra media time that you have to do. They know how to practice for it. They know how to prepare. They probably literally have a routine at this point for the Super Bowl, which matters at this point in the season. It matters. It matters that Mahomes is just freaking so good, man. It's like I don't expect him to come out and play a bad game. I don't think anyone should. It's like
And
It's just gonna be tough for the Niners, I think.
I think, and that's the thing is like whenever you have a quarterback that is an elite level quarterback, truly an elite level quarterback, you know that you've got a really good chance to win. And you could have no receivers like Kansas City and like no true number one receiver. You got a great tight end who's probably a little bit out of his prime. Your offensive line is
Definitely out of his prime, but still really good. You know,
really good. You've got an offensive line that's like the most penalized for holding in the in the league, and you still are like, yeah, but it's Patrick Mahomes. And
right?
the fact that the 49ers have refused to do that means I think that they're always going to be capped at they don't value or trust their quarterbacks that they get because they don't know how to see the value in them
Right.
and know how to draft them well. It's just what and at that point, yeah, I guarantee you they lose. Brock Purdy looks bad. They're calling Kirk Cousins. They're getting him there as quickly as possible because they just can't do this
I would
again.
agree. Now, here's what I'll say too. If they lose, but it looks like the Eagles Super Bowl last year, where Jalen played awesome in the Super Bowl, they just got beat. No one's gonna question Brock Purdy. You know what I mean? It's like no one. People have more questions about Jalen now because he had bad season by someone that almost won the MVP 2 years ago, but or last year. But after the Super Bowl, no one questioned Jalen. It's like, hey man, beating the all-time greats is hard. It's like ask anyone that played Tom Brady in the Super Bowl outside of Eli Manning. It's really hard to beat Tom Brady. It was really hard to beat Kobe. It's really hard to beat MJ. In the Eastern Conference, it was really hard to beat LeBron. It's like, there's no shame if you play well like Jalen did and you get beat at the end of the game because Patrick Mahomes is a top five. We'll get into this after the Super Bowl, but like Patrick Mahomes, a top three quarterback all time already by most metrics. You know what I mean? It's just not a lot of, unless you come out and put up a stinker, it's like he's just gonna lose those games sometimes. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I can't believe the 49ers are favored. I can't believe that's the dumbest line I've ever
I was
seen.
surprised by that. And yet I wasn't, but I still was. It's like if you asked me who I thought was gonna be favored in that game, now you said this, you think the Chiefs are gonna win.
Yeah,
I agree. I think the Chiefs are going to win. I think it's going to look similar to the Baltimore game, but the Niners offense will play a little better. I think the Chiefs come out, kind of shock the Niners offense with how good they are on defense. Mahomes basically going to play perfect-ish to start the game. I think they jump out to a lead, and then I think the Niners have a hard time coming back. I think Mahomes makes enough plays down the stretch. I think they end up winning the game. I could see them win by 10 points, actually. And I'm talking about, I think the Chiefs are going to win by 2 scores. Uh,
it'll be
right.
it'll be fun. It'll be a fun one. I'm tired of the 49ers being like, we're the underdogs. We're
Right.
you Brock Purdy is
Right.
disrespected. Like,
With that being said, like I said, if you had asked me who I thought everyone was going to bet on and who would be favored, I would have picked the Niners because people this has been happening for a couple of years. I don't know if it's already fatigue or people doubt the Chiefs. You know what I mean? They just do. And now, was there some optic reasons this year during the regular season where it looked ugly at times and they had 2 weeks in a row kind of lost it on Tony lining up off sides and it's like they had some bad breaks. It looked bad at times. Uh so was there some reasons? Yes. After the Miami game, I thought the Dallas should win away. They just beat up on a pretty good team, beat them by 19 points. And then, especially after the Buffalo, it's like I just think they're underrated right now. And I think people haven't still caught up to how good the defense is, which, people have talked about how poorly Lamar played. I think you got to give a lot of credit to that defense. And like Lamar didn't look like himself. And they didn't run the ball as well. But a lot of that was Kansas City saying, hey, we're going to blow up every gap and you're going to have to throw it. And they made Lamar throw it and he couldn't get it done. And they're going to have what's the sign of a great defense they are going to have a totally different game plan against the Niners than they did against Baltimore. They had a totally different scheme against Buffalo than Baltimore, and I expect it to be kind of something different this next game, where they can adapt to who they're playing versus what scheme they're going to use, whether or not they're going to try to blitz a lot, whether they're going to try to play man or zone. They're going to adapt. And I think the Niners are going to struggle a little bit on offense for how they can look sometimes. Maybe even a lot, to be honest.
I agree. I think that this defense comes and shuts down Christian McCaffrey as much as you can shut that man down. You know what I mean? But you put somebody on Ayuk and you do not let Kittle get behind you and force
And
Brock Purdy to like really play really
play a dog
play.
quarterback, right? Yeah. Yeah, I expect them to put a lot of guys in the box. I expect them to try to cover Ayuk and Debo with McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed, who are like just great cornerbacks. I mean, maybe the best cornerback duo in the league. I don't know that either one of those guys is the best cornerback in the league, but like who would be a better duo? It's a short list at least. It's maybe the guys Miami, maybe the Dallas defense when they're healthy. There's not a lot of guys that would be in that conversation as far as cornerback duos in the league. So I think they're going to lean on them at least start the game, see if they can beat man-to-man coverage, see if they can stop McCaffrey, and like I said, like you said, make Brock Purdy make hard throws. And if he does, have up to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, so what do you think? I think you're probably right. 27-17 sounds about right to me.
I had 30-20. I think Kansas
30.
City. I think Kansas City probably. I think they're going to jump out to 14-3, maybe 10-0, that kind of start. Then I think they kind of like what Mahomes did against Baltimore, where once they got up 2 scores, Mahomes basically refused to turn the ball over. And people have kind of negatively said, well, they didn't score points in the second half of that game. At that point, the way to lose that game is turning it over, and he wasn't going to do that. And I expect them to need more plays from Mahomes in the second half after they get the lead, and I expect him to deliver.
Yeah.
And that's how I think the game's going to go. And I think we may see a Brock Purdy mistake in there. He's kind of, and I don't want to shit on Brock Purdy today because we've done plenty of that in the past, but he has had some breaks, to put it lightly, in the playoffs where the Packers had a couple drop pick sixes that hit guys in the chest. I think it was the biggest play they had on offense in the Lions game was a pass that hit the defender in the face mask and bounced up, and Ayuk made an amazing play to catch it, but like that's not going to happen all the time. Probably. I mean, it kind of keeps seeming to happen to him, but I think one of those balls is going to get away from him, and Kansas City is going to capitalize on it, and probably going to end up being maybe the difference in the game.
Yeah. Or Brock Purdy comes out, they force him to play adult quarterback, and he throws 4 picks.
Yeah.
What could happen? And I'm not saying I want it to happen, but I would be happy if it happened. But yeah, did you want to talk about coaching philosophies, or do you need to head out?
Uh, well, I have one. We can. I'm good. What do you think would be the recipe for the Niners if they were going to win? Because we both picked Kansas City. What do you think? I think I know, but what do you think the recipe is for the Niners if they're going to pull what we would consider the upset, or if they're going to win and get Kyle Shanahan his first Super Bowl?
You have to stop Pacheco. Like
Sure.
that's what everybody has failed to do is just put Pacheco like behind the line of scrimmage on every run.
Answer. Yeah, because he has had some big runs on first down that get 7 yards or move the chains on first down. He's got a bunch of 3rd-and-1 conversion. He's been kind of underrated may not quite be the right word, but even as much as credit as he's gotten, it makes him a scary team when Mahomes doesn't have to do everything, right? When on a 3rd-and-1, they don't have to roll out Mahomes and try to pass. They can hand it off Pacheco on the 45-yard line on 3rd-and-1.
Yeah.
With understanding maybe they're going to go for it on 4th down, but a lot of he's been getting it a lot too.
So that's the first thing. Second thing, uh, you gotta keep a spy on Mahomes. You cannot allow him to do his scrambles,
Sure.
and like even if you're even if you're going to like take the I'm afraid to hit Mahomes because it'll be an unsportsmanlike like penalty. Like you just have to do it in the Super Bowl. You just have to. You have to hit Mahomes if he's going to scramble, which means you have to put
I know what
somebody
you mean. Yeah.
down there just spying on him, just watching his feet, watching his eyes. You have to make sure that Kelsey does not get behind almost anybody. Like somebody
Way
needs
easier
to look.
said than done. It's like
I
he always seems to find holes in the defense, you know.
know, but that's the thing is like don't do any offsides penalties. You got to be real clean because
Sure.
you know that their line is going to it's going to be a false start at least once because of Jawan Taylor. There's going to be like a couple of holding calls that go your way. So don't make any mistakes like that. Stop the run. Keep somebody from keep Mahomes from scrambling and just keep Travis Kelsey from taking it over the top.
Sure.
If you do those four things, which are all really hard to do,
Right.
you each one of them you can game plan for. You can create a strategy, then you know that their offense isn't going to work because they're not going to have the receiver help that's going to just like Valdez Scantling like had a great catch to kind of ice the game last
Yeah.
week, but that's rare. You know what I mean? Uh,
That's well, that's what you can live with as a defense, basically, right? Is what you're saying. Yeah. It's like that's what if Valdez Scantling is gonna beat you, they're gonna beat you. You know what I mean? That's kind of what you have to do. So
exactly.
so here's basically I have two keys to the game that I think could result in a Niners victory. And it's pretty simple. Number one, you have to pressure Mahomes with four guys. If you have to blitz him, you're screwed. If you don't get pressure, you're screwed. You have to get pressure with four guys. Bosa's got to have a huge game. Chase Young has to play up to the hype and not to the
Do,
productivity
do
of the
literally
game.
anything. He has to show
Right.
up to the
Yeah.
game.
It's like they have to get production from those defensive linemen, have to get pressure with four, first and foremost. And then the second thing is on the other side of the ball, McCaffrey's got to have 150 or 200 rushing yards. If they do those two things, if they are able to run the ball and get pressure on Mahomes with four guys, they could win the game. Now, those are big ask. Even, especially the pressure with four, that's hasn't frankly been the Niners or, hadn't been a strength of theirs this season. And that's something that we looked at during their last Super Bowl run is maybe the best aspect of the team is how dominant that defensive line is. That is not the same defensive line they have right now. It has not looked near like that. Um, Kansas City, unfortunately, probably is going to have to deal with some offensive line injuries, which we saw the last time they had a bunch of offensive line injuries was the Super Bowl against Tampa, and that didn't go very well. And people, just a side note about that game, real quick. People always say that's like Mahomes' worst game, or like like the playoff game he didn't show up for, whatever you want to say. Go back and watch that game because that is as good as I've ever seen him play. And I know that's a little bit of a hot take. He played awesome, and we were watching that game together, I believe. And he had balls that hit guys in the face mask in the end zone that they dropped. Like Tyreek Hill dropped one. I know he was running for his life out there and throwing dimes. And like, show me the quarterback who would have won that game as the Chiefs quarterback all time. You could pick anybody in the history of the league. You know, you're just not going to find anyone. It's like I actually thought that was one of the best I've ever seen him play, not one of the worst. And I
Well,
know that's a little bit of a hot take, and the number is not going to support that. The score definitely not going to, reflect that. But
I think that this game really is is the epitome of offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. And 9 times out of 10, I would tell you that the NFL, you have to go and score more points than the other team is going to. But I
some
think for
sports, you got to, you usually win
no,
if you
no
score
sport,
more points,
no
right?
sport, but like your philosophy needs to be, I'm going to score more points than you.
Right.
But I think at this level, both of these teams, like Christian McCaffrey, he's gonna, if he has a terrible day, he's still gonna have 100+ rushing yards. You know what I mean? Like Ayuk, if he has a terrible day, is still gonna have like 150 receiving. It's just
I don't know, that'd be terrible. But the receivers, the stats can be more dramatic than
a
that, I
little
think.
bit, yeah, a little bit more fluctuations, but there's still going to be like
There's
the
still
offenses on both of these teams are still going to get points. You know what I mean?
right,
So at a certain point, if you're the 49ers, you do not want the Chiefs getting any points because the second that dagger comes out,
right.
it's not going back. So the more you're able to just take away their tried and true from what they've been doing all season, running the ball, Mahomes scramble, um, uh, Travis Kelce taking it over the top, and you know forcing other teams to make really dumb decisions at the line. That is going to be what wins this game.
Well, I'm gonna stop you there because you just said it. I think, in this any big game, often this is kind of the key. Who's gonna make the mistakes? You know what I mean? Like in the Ravens game, Lamar threw a pick in the end zone into triple coverage. Otherwise, the game would have been a lot more interesting. You know what I mean? It's like that's and Mahomes didn't do that. It's like who's going to make the mistakes? I know the Ravens fumbled on the half-yard line going in. That those were the two plays of the game. Probably was the pick and the fumble. Now the Chiefs ended up winning the Bills game despite fumbling on the half-yard line. So it's like it is possible, but to make up for something like that, but who's going to play a clean game? Who's going to have a key pass interference on a third down? Who's going to fumble a punt return or something like that? It's like those are the kind of things that could win or lose this level of game.
Yeah.
And I think we won't just to reiterate one more time, that's where the Chiefs' experience in these spots, I think, is a huge advantage, is because the routine, the preparation, having that down for the Super Bowl week, I think will help them limit the mistakes. And the Niners, I could see being a little nervous, and coming out a little tight. And we talked about Shanahan plenty. So,
All right. Well, I think that's it, man. I think we did
in
a good
in
one.
one word, who wins Super Bowl MVP?
Patrick Mahomes.
I agree. If you're going to bet the Chiefs to win the game, just bet Mahomes win the Super Bowl MVP. It's hard for me to imagine anyone else would win it and the Chiefs win. And so
Yeah.
that would be my quick gambling advice. It's
All
just
right. If the 49ers win,
McCaffrey.
thank you.
I think
It is
McCaffrey.
not going to be Brock Purdy. I do not care.
I think that would be the key for the Niners to win anyway. Like I said, is McCaffrey having a huge game. Purdy could play good and they still get beat. And that's something that everyone kind of needs to be prepared for because that just happens. It's like Josh Allen, I thought played good this year and they got beat. Lamar didn't play good, but we've seen Jalen Hurts last year played awesome. They got beat. And it's like if the running game gets going, that's going to be the key for the Niners to beat the Chiefs, I think. So,
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been, like I said, episode 15, and we will see you all after the Super Bowl.
Woo!
Yeah.